And I think there's been a lot of waste. There's been a lot of crony capitalism involved in infrastructure projects around the country. But we have to put people there who have a magnifying glass, who know how to balance a budget because they've been doing it for 16 years in a small business. Otherwise, they're out of business. That's the kind of skill set and mentality that we absolutely need in Congress, in fact, in all of our elected positions.
Thank you, Ms. Bonamici.
Yes, infrastructure projects is something I've been talking about on the campaign trail because it can be a win-win. Getting people back to work on the project, especially our renewable energy businesses with rebuilding our energy grid, our roads, our bridges. We do have projects like the CRC, the Newburgh-Dundee bypass, excuse me, that have taken way too long, and that's the kind of thing that is causing people to be frustrated with government. Let's get people back to work on those projects. Let's work carefully on the funding proposals for those. There are several different ways to fund infrastructure projects, but we need to get people back to work on those projects. And it isn't just the people working on the projects, it's also the ancillary businesses and the money that's in the pockets of their families as well. So yes, to infrastructure.
Thank you. Now, as we close our program, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement. And we'll start with Mr. Cornilles.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you for your interest in this process. I've learned as a father, I've learned as a coach of many youth sports, I've learned as an employer. If you want an action repeated, reward it. If you want the actions that have led us to have to be here today to participate in a special election because our last congressman embarrassed us, and because we're the only district in the country without representation, if you want to make sure something like this happens again, then let's reward the people who knew better but insisted on covering it up. But if you agree with me that it's time for a fresh start, it's time for a new perspective, then I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking you to look inside yourself and say, not so much what's best for a party, and don't even worry about Washington, D.C. right now. Just think about the 1st District. As Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. What's locally best for these communities between the two of us standing on this stage? Now, I know many of you are looking at the two of us and you're asking, which of you is more inclined to go back to Washington, D.C. and actually work with people on either side of the aisle to get something positive accomplished? That is a fair question. I pledge to you I will be that kind of congressman. I've demonstrated it in this campaign. I'll continue to demonstrate it throughout and after the election. Now, may I challenge you, though? Will you do the same? Will you take on a bipartisan attitude starting today if you don't already have one? Will you, those of you who've never voted for a Republican, those of you who came in thinking you never vote for me, how can you expect Congress to be bipartisan to create effective, positive change for our country if we're not willing to do it right here at home? Let's set the standard, let's set an example on January 31st. I'm Rob Cornilles. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. Now, I don't need to tell you that Congress has pretty low approval ratings these days. That's because too many people are out of work, there's too much in foreclosures, homes underwater, hunger and homelessness. It's time for Congress to stop playing politics and do their job. The voters in the 1st Congressional District are ready for leadership, ready for someone who will tackle the debt and the deficit, but do it with the right priorities. Someone who doesn't just talk on the campaign trail about balancing a budget, someone who's actually done it. Someone who doesn't just talk about working across the aisle, someone who's actually done it. I'm accused of voting 98% of the time with a majority of Democrats. You know how many times I voted with a majority of Republicans? 98% of the time. Congress could take a lesson from the way we do things in the Oregon legislature. Someone who can be trusted, not someone who changes political positions based on the campaign or the way the wind is blowing. Now, even before this campaign began, the Oregonian wrote an editorial called "A Seat in the United States Congress is not an entry-level position." They noted there's good reasons why Oregonians rarely send people to Congress who have never held elected office. I am proud to have received the endorsement of the Oregonian. Now, my record in the Oregon legislature isn't long, but it's strong. I've shown leadership, I've tackled complex issues, and I've developed a record I'm proud of, a bipartisan record. I'll take that leadership to Congress, where I'll focus on rebuilding jobs in the short term and in the long term, helping businesses get access to capital, which is why more than 40 small business owners have endorsed my candidacy. And I will work on long-term solutions like improving our system of public education, pre-K through higher education, and making sure that we have strong consumer protection laws to rebuild consumer confidence. Now, I encourage the voters in the 1st Congressional District to heed the Oregonians' call to examine our records. I'm Suzanne Bonamici. I would appreciate your vote and be honored. Thank you again.
Thank you both. You provided thoughtful answers on issues and concerns that are important to the citizens of the 1st Congressional District. Please join me in a round of applause. On your busy schedule, you'll take time to reflect on the importance of voting, especially for this race, and please prepare yourselves to vote in the January 31st special election.